Well, choo-choo, you guys. I was going to say...
Mother chugger?
Yeah, exactly. There you go.
Yeah.
That works. Today we're talking about haunted trains.
Yeah, they're cursed. They might take you somewhere evil. And we're gonna take you down that rabbit hole right now.
Right now.
Starting off our list today, we have the Silverpilen Arrow of the Stockholm subway station in Sweden. A shiny ghost train said to haunt the tunnels and pick up unsuspecting passengers at random. The Silverpilen has been known to stop at random stations at random times and to draw passengers into its train's cars in order to take them to a place called Kennington, a real but abandoned subway station known as the Station of the Dead. It is said that those that arrive there are either trapped there for life or that they are stuck there for at least a decade before they are able to somehow find their way back up to the world above. Those who have seen the Silverpilen Arrow have described it in one of two ways. One, that when the train comes to a stop in front of them, its doors open and its carriages are eerily and completely empty. And two, which is the more creepy one in my opinion, when the doors open they do so to reveal the ghostly souls of passengers who have been lost to the Station of the Dead.
This next ghostly train seemed to be a dark omen of death. The Phantom Train of Medicine Hat. It's a pretty spooky story. So in June of 1908, a train set out from Medicine Hat, Canadian Pacific Railway Station, bound for Dunmore. On board were engineer Bob Tuhey and fireman Gus Day. Everything was pretty normal until, to their horror, they saw the light of an oncoming train. Now this was a single track, so all they could do was try to stop, but they knew there was no way they were going to stop in time before the train barreled into them. Just as they thought they were about to crash though, they didn't. Somehow the train moved off the tracks and passed along beside them. They watched as people on board on the other train waved to them before it vanished into the night. Tuhey and Day were completely shaken and didn't even discuss what they'd just seen, each thinking that they'd lost their minds. Tuhey was so shaken up that he went and saw a fortune teller who told him that he was going to die within a month. Tuhey decided to take some time off of work. A couple weeks later, Day was on the job, this time with a man named Jay Nicholson, and they both witnessed the Phantom Train again, passing them by as the ghostly passengers waved. Then, on July 8th of 1908, Jay Nicholson boarded the same train he'd operated with Day a few nights earlier. Along with him was fireman H. Thompson. Gus Day had been assigned to yard service, so fortunately he wasn't on the train. Now, as the train approached the location where the Phantom locomotive had been spotted before, another train appeared around the bend. But this time it wasn't just a ghost train, it was an actual train. And at the throttle of this oncoming train was none other than Bob Tuhey, who'd finally returned to work after his time off being a little rattled. And this time the trains did crash, and both engineers, Tuhey and Nicholson, died on impact along with 9 passengers. Bob Tuhey had died just like the fortune teller had predicted.
Now, while this next train won't necessarily take you to an evil location, it might bring you to a bit of a dark place mentally, or make you quit your job. Either one. It's the Phantom Train of Marshall Pass, located in Colorado. The story goes that one night an engineer named Nelson Edwards was maneuvering his train along the tracks in winter when all of a sudden he heard the sound of another train creeping up behind his own, and he saw the train's light behind him. He sped up as the train behind him raced faster and faster and closer until he got to a point on the tracks that required him to stop. He took his chances and hit the brakes, and to his surprise, nothing happened. In fact, the train behind him vanished right into thin air. It was as though it never existed. When Edwards went home that night, he had an eerie feeling, a feeling which only grew after receiving an anonymous note recounting the details of a similar crash that took place just a few years prior. He retired the next day.
The London Underground is full of ghostly urban legends. There are tons of ghosts in supposedly haunted stations, but the Kennington Loop is said to be one of the eeriest sections of the London subway. You do not want to be on the train when it goes through the Kennington loop. Or if you're like me, then you definitely do, but the point is, there are a lot of spooky stories about this section of the subway. So the Northern Line is a lengthy underground route that runs all the way from the northern outskirts to the southern areas of London. Along this line is the infamous Loop. It's the turnaround point for trains and is completely off limits to passengers. Train operators tend to get pretty spooked here though. First of all, it's a tight loop, so it's a bit tricky to navigate, and there are tons of reports from train drivers hearing strange voices echoing through the empty train. Some drivers will even claim to hear the sound of carriage doors slamming open and shut all by themselves.
Next up, we have the St. Louis Ghost Train of Saskatchewan, Canada. The train is somewhat of a legend in St. Louis. Not only is it a ghost train, but it runs along ghost tracks. And some locals claim to have seen the lights and heard the sounds of the train at least 50 to 60 times in their life. At one time, the train and the tracks were very real, but both have since been removed from the town. The most popular explanation given by locals for the removal of the train and the tracks is that one night, a Canadian National Railway conductor was out examining the train tracks when a train came rushing by and took his head clean off, which is why sometimes the ghostly light of this phantom train shines a bright, deep red. Those who have seen the light describe it as prominent and strong, creeping slowly down the lines of where the old tracks used to be before completely disappearing into the bushes.
The Lincoln Funeral Train is one of America's most famous ghost train legends. So after President Abraham Lincoln was killed in 1865, a funeral train carried his body on a long journey from Washington, D.C. to Springfield, Illinois, where he was to be buried. The train traveled 1,654 miles and stopped in several cities along the way so that people could pay their respects. The train was draped in black cloth and a mourning crepe. It was an ominous reminder of a sad event in a very dark time in American history. Now, the legend goes, though, that on the anniversary of Lincoln's death, the funeral train returns. People say they've seen this eerie train moving silently along the tracks, pulled by a locomotive covered in black and lit by dim, flickering lanterns. Some stories also mention phantom mourners standing by the train and the sound of bells tolling softly in the distance.
Next up, we have the Bostian Bridge Ghost Train located in Iredell County in North Carolina. The ghost of a real train that on August 27th of 1891 was involved in a fatal railway accident that cost the lives of 23 people. The train had been behind schedule, and so the conductor began picking up speed in an effort to catch up on the delay. But instead of making it on time to the next stop, the train derailed and went flying off the bridge. Now, if that's not enough tragedy for you, in 2010, 119 years later, on the exact day of the incident, a person was killed by a train on that very same bridge. People in the town who frequent the area surrounding the bridge where the tragedy occurred have reported various incidents of the ghost train making its way along the tracks, accompanied by the sounds of moaning and wounded passengers who would have either perished or been badly injured in the incident that gave the bridge its infamy.
Baton Rouge, Louisiana is home to Frenchtown Road, a creepy road that's said to be haunted by ghosts, devil worship, and yes, a phantom train. Running across a section of the wooded road is an old bridge where trains used to pass. This is where most of the paranormal stuff happens. The story goes that back in the day, a train derailed, killing everyone on board, and to this day, on some nights, people can hear the ghostly sounds of a train chugging by, along with phantom whistles. Some will even swear they can see the lights of an oncoming train, which never comes. There have also been sightings of ghostly passengers lurking around the tracks. Another story goes that a school bus had been hit by a train, killing all the youngsters inside, but there's not a whole lot of credible information on that. Along with the phantom train, though, this section of Frenchtown Road is also famous for the creepy cultish activity. People have reported hearing the sounds of chanting coming from the surrounding forest, and satanic symbols are constantly being graffitied on the bridge, which has led to rumors about satanic rituals taking place. Is it just people fooling around, or is there something else going on?
Next up, we have the Republic Ghost Train. Like the Bostian Bridge train, the Republic Ghost Train is the ghost of a very real train that was involved in a very real accident. On January 4th of 1887, an eastbound freight train and a westbound passenger train met head-on the tracks of Seneca County at alarming speeds. When the trains collided, they were going so fast that their fronts were momentarily lifted off of the tracks before they both came crashing down and began to burn. Flames erupted from the smoker car and soon engulfed the train almost entirely. It is estimated that 22 people died that day, but the true death count remains unknown. Luckily for some, an unknown passenger was able to detach the sleeper cars located at the back of the train and save them from being affected by the flames. Although it's been over a century since the accident, many people in the town still claim to see the train making its way over the bridge in the dark of night.
So far, we've only talked about ghost trains on this list, but we're gonna finish off with one that may not be cursed in the traditional sense, but would definitely transport you to a hellish place. The Soviet Union's system of forced labor camps were known as the Gulag. These were not places you wanted to be, but if you were a political descendant or a criminal or perceived enemy of the government in any way, you could land yourself on a train to some remote area to spend your days in a labor camp. Prisoners were crowded into cramped and unsanitary cattle cars with little food or water for the long journeys that could last for weeks or even months. Many prisoners suffered from malnutrition, disease before even arriving at the camps, and once they were there, they committed to grueling labor, often in extreme weather. Many prisoners did not survive the harsh conditions of the Gulag camps, and those who did would suffer with physical and psychological scars for the rest of their lives. I want to go to the Kennington Loop. I want to hear what's those kind of creepy sounds.
Yeah.
See if it's real. What method of transportation should we do next? Cursed planes?
Oh no.
Cursed bicycles?
Oh god, yeah, cursed planes will maybe leave that one out. Planes are scary.
As is, yeah.
Yeah. Let us know.
What you want to see next. With all that said, I've been your host, James.
I've been your host, Hannah.
We'll catch you in the next one.
That we will.